Hello all and welcome to MarketWatch with Block. Today is the 7th of September 2021, and of course before we do anything, don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Hit the notification button as well so you can stay as up to date as humanly possible with all of these latest MarketWatch updates. Now we are about a week into Rektember, as everyone is referring to it as, and historically over the past 4 years we've seen this month of September be a red candle. Although, you know, there's certain things, not this dump included, that have indicated that we might be able to avoid that scenario. So let's have a look at today's BTC analysis, and we'll start from the top down as we usually do. And as we saw just up here, we saw that the US came online, and that coincided quite dramatically with a pretty large dump, or big fat dump, as I have just listed on the chart there, of about 2.5%. Now, with the US and traders, generally when the US comes online, we kind of see a continuation of the direction that the market is going, and quite a volatile continuation as that, and this is kind of no different either. Moving on to the alpha momentum, which is this indicator just here, we saw a significant signal pop up, which is a bearish divergence on the volume oscillator. And what this kind of deems, it works in a similar kind of methodology to most divergences, but it uses volume as a base indicator to it. And that pinpointed the top almost perfectly. We'll have a look at a couple of the other indicators as well, because there were 4 signals from the alpha suite that actually indicated this peak. We are currently operating in a pretty much a bearish or short-term bearish altcoin market. And by that, the calculations are the alt volume is down, the BT price is up, and the BT, let's start again. Alt volume down, Bitcoin price down, and also the Bitcoin dominance is going up. So that is a terrible storm for altcoins, and we're seeing that signified by the short-term and long-term, short period and long period indication there. We'll just cover these oscillators at the bottom. As we can see down here on the alpha volume, we hit the peak just here. As you can see, the BPT index signal. And indicated on the chart as well, that caught the peak perfectly. So had you have entered any one of these 4 signals, you could have made about 4.5% off the Bitcoin short there, the Bitcoin. But as we can see also here on the alpha volume, the BPT index and the RSI index just there is showing that it is actually oversold at the moment where we're sitting. We'll have a deep dive into the chart in a minute as to why that's quite important. And then finishing off on the alpha wave, which gives a bit of an indication of how the price is reacting. And if we open this up a little bit wider, you can see our BlockParty Rsi Cloud. This is kind of like an RSI come RSI oscillator come stock, and all sorts of other things in there as well. But the thing to watch out for is when this cloud goes fully above or below the 70 or 30, then that is heavily oversold and overbought on several different layers. But one thing that I want to pay attention to here is this divergence that is formed here. Bearish divergence, which if we were to tack that on just up here, would look something like this. And that goes right up there. So as you can see, price is moving up and the relative prices, or relative wave, whatever you want to call it, is moving down. So that is a key indication, especially when we are coming to key historical resistances, which are these lines drawn on up there. That pretty much, as well to finish off, we are kind of in the greed territory at the moment on the hourly as well. So you really want to be looking at fear and greed on the daily, to be honest. But on the short term, you know, we are in very greedy territory on the fear and greed index. And currently general kind of like bunch of oscillators and also moving averages. Oscillators are actually saying neutral right now, but the moving averages and everything, unsurprisingly, is saying sell. Right, let's move on to the actual chart analysis itself. Based on yesterday's analysis, I was expecting it to continue up, and this is where we were at when I kind of called out the bullish flag, and it looked pretty textbook. I was expecting it to move down a little bit, which is kind of quite traditional with what flags do, and then it bounced up, and it was, I would say, arguably almost perfect to the points as to where it went. And then I was expecting a steep rejection here at 52,900, and it went down again to where I was expecting. However, unfortunately, it kept on going down. I did note in yesterday's analysis, bless you, Gerald. I did note in yesterday's analysis that we did have a CME gap, which would probably be filled at some point. I wasn't actually expecting it to be filled so quickly, But then below that as well, in this kind of little orangey box down here, this is the weekly pivot, you know, your highs and lows and average of the past week. And these pretty much always get hit in some capacity, as you can see here in a wick form. You know, it's not over yet. We might actually see the full weekly pivot be filled. However, they really commonly get hit inside the week as well, as we've just seen here. So I did say that there was a chance that, you know, the price could drop down, but it was a bit unlikely given everything that was going on. Although, unfortunately, we did break down below this quite key trend line. And on the high time frames, you know, we can argue it's like, oh, well, that's, you know, blockhead, that's not exactly right. But on the high time frames, we'll see this as just one wick. Chuck it up to the 4 hour or even 1 day, and you'll see what I mean. But we have quite significantly broken down below it. So we have pretty much 2 plays from what I foresee at the moment. Generally, these kind of dumps come in 2s, and I think we might just be consolidating, getting ready for the second dump. And we're going to head on down to about here, which is, I would probably ignore this trend line, which is automatically drawn on, because it's not, it's based on 2 relatively weak pivot points. I wouldn't really argue to call those pivot points, to be honest. But the thing which I do want you to take note of is on the volume profile here, we can see that there is key volume and key activity in this area, which unsurprisingly sits around about the 50,000. But between 50,000 to 50,500 is where I see there being a very, very hard wall to break through. So I do think we are going to break down to about here, and it should gather a little bit of strength to bounce back up. And it might rattle around in this area between 50,500 and where are we at? 51,000, the good old 51k, which has been a real pain to break through. One thing I could be a little bit concerned about if we scroll out, obviously always scroll out to look at the forest, not the trees. You know, if we are coming up, again, this is going to be very roughly drawn on. We're coming up here, you know, in fact, actually, let's not start up there. Ignore that. We'll leave that in there for people to laugh at later. So if we're coming up here, we'll hit this shoulder, armpit, head, armpit, potential shoulder up here, and then it could sink down quite fast. So for those of you who don't know, that is what is called a bearish head and shoulder pattern. Again, very roughly drawn on, very speculative at the moment, but it is something that could play out. So just because we bounce up here, we would be hitting the underside of that trend line almost perfectly, as it seems, and then we could crash quite hard down, and we could fulfill this Rektember philosophy. But yeah, so that kind of summarizes where we're at with Bitcoin analysis today. Other things that are going on in the world, well, Panama has just passed a bill to accept, well, to legalize Bitcoin. That could be quite huge given the Panama Canal. But more notably, Bitcoin Day, which is the 7th of September, and this is El Salvador making Bitcoin legal tender and the first country to do so. As we can see, generally with these kind of news and very, very obvious news that's going to come out, we almost always see traders selling the news. You know, buy the rumor, sell the news. It's an age-old adage that always rings true. You know, I've been burnt so many times as a young trader before when I'm like, oh my God, we're all gonna be millionaires. And you know, institutions have bought weeks, months before, and this is the point when they sell it. So whilst it's good long term, potentially given that they do a good job with it and they're successful with it and they don't prove it's a thunderous catastrophe, then yes, there's gonna be a lot more adoption. In the short term, one more mainstream adoption, then that's great news. Anyway, as we can see, let's have a quick identify of all of the 4 indicators that would have caught you out of this short, but most importantly, safeguarded you from opening new trades. We have the bearish divergence up here, that's one. Then we have the wave divergence, that's 2. We have the peak of the wave indicating that this is quite overbought, sorry. And then finally we have the BP index indicator as well. Any one of those 4, if you would have taken, would have gained you about 4.5 cents. And of course, as we all like to YOLO on 100x leverage, that would have been 450% gains. Quite easy just by following some colors on a chart. And if you want to get your hands on the alpha indicators, then they are free via the premium service with BlockParty Trading. So sign up, get your hands on these, well, what we like to call the cheat system of trading, and start making some money with BlockParty. Until then, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep up to date with all the latest MarketWatch videos, and they are a little bit, give a little bit of random insight outside my usual Bitcoin analysis. So even if you are in the premium group, check out the videos, because who knows, you might learn something. Until next time, guys, remember, patience pays.